She found the documents on a Thursday afternoon, hidden in her husband's desk drawer, beneath hotel receipts and a Tiffany receipt for an engagement ring that was not hers. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the folder labeled Contingency Protocol. Inside were divorce papers with her forged signature, custody agreements giving her husband full rights to their unborn baby, and her own therapy records from foster care, highlighted and annotated with 3 words that made her blood run cold. Evidence of mental instability. Her billionaire husband had not married her for
Emma,
love.
you'll regret this.
He had selected her, targeted her,
over, Marcus.
planned to steal
We
her
have
baby the
overcome the
moment she said I
impossible,
do.
and now
She
we
was
will
7 months
achieve the
pregnant.
extraordinary.
She had no family.
This is not just our goal.
No money of her
It is
own.
our destiny.
And the man she trusted with her life was about to destroy it. What happened next would cost her everything. Her baby, her freedom, her best friend nearly beaten to death as a warning. But here is what Marcus Weston did not expect. He did not expect her to survive. He did not expect her to fight back. And he definitely did not expect her to marry his greatest rival and burn his empire to the ground. This is the story of how one woman lost everything and turned her pain into the weapon that destroyed the man who broke her. Stay until the end, because the twist at the 40-minute mark will change everything you think you know about this story. Value statement. Before we begin, I want you to know something important. This story is not just entertainment. It is a survival guide disguised as drama. Every woman watching this will learn the warning signs of financial abuse, the red flags that are easy to miss when you are in love, the steps to protect yourself before it is too late. Because the monsters in this story are not fiction. They exist in boardrooms and beautiful houses and charming smiles, and the only defense against them is knowledge. Meaning of the story. This story carries one powerful truth. The world will try to break you because you are soft, but do not let them make you hard. Let them make you sharp. There is a difference. Hard means bitter, closed off, defeated even in survival. Sharp means taking every wound and turning it into wisdom, every scar into strength, every loss into a lesson that saves someone else. Emma lost her baby. She lost her freedom. She lost everything she thought she wanted, but she gained something more valuable. She gained purpose. She gained the power to protect other women from the same fate. That is what real victory looks like. Not revenge, not wealth, but becoming the person who breaks the cycle. The nursery smelled like fresh paint and lavender. Emma Callahan stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other holding a box of yellow butterfly decals she had bought at Target that morning for $12.47. 7 months pregnant, married to one of the wealthiest men in Connecticut, living in a $15 million mansion with more bathrooms than she could count, and still clipping coupons like her life depended on it. Old habits, Diane always said. Old habits from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. Emma crossed the room slowly, her back aching from the extra weight she carried. The hardwood floors creaked beneath her feet, the only sound in this massive house that ever felt real. She pressed the first butterfly against the wall above the crib, smoothing out the wings with her thumb until the adhesive held firm. Yellow, gender neutral. Because Marcus wanted to be surprised. She had wanted to know, had begged the ultrasound technician to tell her. But Marcus had been in the room, and Marcus had opinions about everything, and somehow his opinions always became her decisions. That was how it had worked in this marriage. She just had not noticed until recently. Her phone buzzed on the windowsill, and Emma smiled when she saw the name lighting up the screen. Diane Mercer, her best friend from the elementary school where Emma used to teach kindergarten. The woman who had watched Emma transform from a broke, exhausted teacher eating ramen for dinner into the wife of Marcus Weston in less than 2 years. Diane had opinions about that transformation too. She was just brave enough to voice them. Emma answered on the second ring. "Hey you, girl." Diane's voice crackled through the speaker with that familiar mix of warmth and exasperation. "You better be sitting down with your feet up. That baby is not going to raise itself, and you need rest. Doctor's orders. My orders. Everyone's orders." Emma laughed softly, pressing another butterfly to the wall. "I am resting, just decorating the nursery a little. Light activity, nothing strenuous, a little." Diane snorted so loud Emma had to pull the phone away from her ear. "You know what I was doing at 7 months pregnant with my third? Lying on my couch watching trash television and eating ice cream straight from the container. Rocky Road, the good stuff with the big marshmallows. That is what pregnant women are supposed to do. I bought these butterflies, Emma said, stepping back to admire her work. Yellow ones. They are really pretty, actually. Gender neutral because Marcus wants to be surprised. There was a pause on the other end, the kind of pause that meant Jan was choosing her next words very carefully. Marcus wants to be surprised, Diane repeated slowly. Interesting. What do you want, Emma? The question landed harder than it should have. Emma stared at the butterfly on the wall, its wings frozen mid-flight, and tried to remember the last time someone had asked her what she wanted. I think it is sweet, Emma finally said. The surprise part. It will make the birth more special. Mm-hmm. Another pause, longer this time. Hey, random question. Totally unrelated. Do you have access to your bank accounts? Emma blinked, confused by the sudden shift. What do you mean? Your accounts, joint accounts, whatever you have with Marcus. Can you log in and see the money? Move it around if you need to? Marcus handles the finances, Emma said automatically. It is just easier that way. He has accountants and advisors and people who understand all that complicated stuff. I would probably mess it up. The silence on Diane's end stretched so long that Emma checked to make sure the call had not dropped. Emma, Diane's voice had changed, softer now, more serious. That is not romantic. That is a red flag the size of Texas wrapped in a $100 bill. It is not like that, Emma protested. But even as she said the words, something flickered in her chest. A small, cold thing she did not want to examine too closely. He is not controlling or anything. He just knows more about money than I do. He grew up with it. I grew up with nothing. Every woman needs her own money, Diane said firmly. I do not care if your husband is Bill Gates himself. My divorce lawyer told me something I will never forget. She said every woman needs a secret savings account, not for leaving, for staying standing if he leaves you. Marcus is not going to leave me, Emma said. She pressed her free hand against her belly, feeling the baby shift beneath her palm. We are having a child together. I am not saying he will, Diane replied gently. I am saying you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet no matter what happens. That is not paranoia, honey. That is survival. Promise me you will at least think about it. Emma pressed another butterfly to the wall, watching it stick and hold. Fine, I will think about it. Good. Now tell me about the nursery. What else did you get besides butterflies? They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. Diane's son Tyler failing algebra again despite 3 tutors. The new principal at the school who smelled like mothballs and disapproval. The weather turning cold earlier than usual this year, which Diane blamed on everything from climate change to government conspiracies depending on her mood. By the time Emma hung up, the sun had shifted across the nursery floor, casting long shadows through the window, and she realized she had run out of butterflies. She needed more decals and printer paper for the baby shower invitations she was designing on her laptop. Marcus's home office had supplies. He kept everything organized in there, labeled and sorted in that meticulous way of his that she used to find charming. Emma made her way down the long hallway, past the guest bedrooms that had never hosted a single guest, past the library filled with leather-bound books that Marcus had never read. They were decorative, he had told her once, for appearances. Everything in this house was for appearances. The mansion was beautiful, magazine beautiful, the kind of beautiful that photographers captured for spreads in Architectural Digest. It was also the loneliest place Emma had ever lived. Lonelier than the foster homes. Lonelier than her tiny apartment in Columbus, where she used to eat cereal for dinner and grade papers until midnight. At least in that apartment, the walls had felt like they belonged to her. The office door was unlocked. Marcus was at work. He was always at work. Weston Holdings did not run itself, he liked to say, usually while checking his phone during dinner or taking calls during what was supposed to be their quality time together. Emma stepped inside and flicked on the light. The office smelled like leather and expensive cologne, Marcus's scent lingering even when he was miles away. She crossed to the supply closet and pulled open the door. No printer paper on the shelf. She must have used the last of it weeks ago. She checked the desk drawers next. Filing supplies, pens in neat rows. A stapler that probably cost more than her first car. The bottom drawer stuck when she pulled it. She tugged harder, using both hands. It opened with a screech of metal on wood, and something inside shifted with the motion. Emma stared. A second phone. She recognized the brand, the sleek black case. It was not the phone Marcus carried every day. This one was older, the screen slightly scratched, hidden beneath a stack of papers like something that was not supposed to be found. Her hands trembled as she lifted the papers away. Hotel receipts. The Carlisle in Manhattan. Room 1847. The dates went back 18 months. Every Thursday like clockwork, neat and organized just like everything else Marcus did. A jewelry receipt from Tiffany. An engagement ring purchased last month. 2.4 carats, princess cut, platinum band. Not hers. Hers was an heirloom from Marcus's grandmother, a ring she had always felt slightly uncomfortable wearing because it never quite fit right. And beneath all of it, a document labeled contingency protocol. Emma sank to the floor, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward and ungraceful. She did not care. Her legs would not hold her anymore. The pages inside the folder made no sense at first. Legal language, dense paragraphs of terms and conditions. Her name scattered throughout like a recurring character in someone else's story. Then the words started to register, one by one, each one a small knife sliding between her ribs. Pre-drafted divorce papers. Her signature at the bottom. A signature she had never signed, but there it was, perfect and damning. Custody agreement. Full parental rights granted to Marcus Weston. The mother, identified as Emma Callahan Weston, deemed unfit due to documented history of mental instability. Medical records. Her therapy records from when she was a teenager in foster care. Sessions she had poured her heart into, trusting a counselor who promised everything was confidential. Someone had obtained them illegally and attached them to this file. They were marked with yellow highlighter, specific phrases circled in red ink. History of depression, abandonment issues, difficulty forming secure attachments. The phrase at the top of the page made her stomach turn. Evidence of mental instability, documentation for custody proceedings. Emma sat on the cold hardwood floor surrounded by papers that proved everything she believed about her life was a lie. He had been planning this. All of it. The chance meeting at the charity gala. The whirlwind courtship. The proposal after only 8 months. The pregnancy that happened so quickly she barely had time to adjust to being married. She was not his wife. She was his target. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps in the foyer. Marcus's voice calling her name. That warm, familiar sound that used to make her heart lift. Emma, sweetheart, I came home early. Where are you? Emma grabbed her phone and did the only thing her teacher instincts knew how to do. She photographed everything. Every page. Every receipt. Every damning word. Her hands shook so badly some of the images came out blurred, but she kept shooting, kept documenting, kept building evidence. Document, document, document. That was what they taught you in education. When something goes wrong, you document. When a parent threatens you, you document. When administration fails you, you document. Because without evidence, your word means nothing. And Emma Callahan had just learned exactly how much her word was worth in Marcus Weston's world. Nothing at all. She shoved the papers back into the drawer, closed it, and walked out of the office on legs that did not feel like her own. Her heart was slamming against her ribs. Her vision tunneled at the edges, but she kept walking. Down the hallway, down the stairs, toward the voice of the man she had married, the man she had loved, the man who had been planning to steal her child from the moment he first smiled at her. She had to be calm. She had to be smart. She had to survive long enough to figure out what to do next. Emma reached the bottom of the stairs and found Marcus waiting for her, with a bouquet of roses and that perfect, practiced smile. There you are, he said. I missed you. She smiled back. She had no other choice. I missed you too. Marcus found her in the kitchen 20 minutes later. Emma had spent those 20 minutes staring at the marble countertops, trying to compose herself, trying to figure out how to have a conversation that could determine the rest of her life. She had settled on direct, calm and direct. Confront him with what she knew and see how he reacted. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe she had misunderstood. Maybe she was going crazy. just like those documents suggested. He was smiling when he walked in. He was always smiling. That was one of the first things she had noticed about him at the charity gala where they met, how his smile seemed to light up the room, how it made everyone around him feel special and seen. Now she wondered if that smile had ever been real. "There you are," he said, setting his briefcase on the counter. "I called your name 3 times. Are you okay? You look pale." Emma gripped the edge of the sink. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had rehearsed this moment in her head for the past 20 minutes. Calm, controlled, direct. Who is she? The words came out steadier than she expected. Almost cold. Marcus tilted his head slightly, the way a dog does when it hears an unfamiliar sound. The smile did not waver. If anything, it deepened, settling into something that looked like genuine confusion. "Who is who, sweetheart?" "The woman you bought a Tiffany ring for last month." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight, humming with tension. Emma watched his face, searching for guilt, for shame, for any crack in the perfect mask he wore. Nothing changed. His expression remained pleasant, curious, almost amused, like she had asked him about the weather or what he wanted for dinner. "You went through my private office?" He said it softly, not angry, concerned, the way you might speak to a child who had done something worrying. "I was looking for printer paper, for the baby shower invitations." Marcus sighed, long and theatrical, and walked toward her slowly. Emma instinctively stepped back until her spine pressed against the cold edge of the counter. "Emma," he said, his voice gentle and terrible, "we have talked about this before. Your episodes, the paranoia, the anxiety. Dr. Weiss warned me this might happen during the pregnancy. The hormones can make things worse. I do not have episodes. You are 7 months pregnant and you are spiraling." His voice remained calm, patient, understanding. "This is exactly what happened to your mother before the accident, is it not? The paranoia, the delusions that everyone was out to get her?" The words hit her like a physical blow. He knew. He knew everything about her past. Her parents dying in that car crash when she was 11. The way her mother had been acting strange in the weeks before, suspicious of neighbors, certain someone was following her. The foster homes that followed, each one worse than the last. The therapy sessions where she had shared her deepest fears with a counselor she trusted. He had weaponized all of it. "Do not talk about my mother," Emma whispered. "I am trying to help you," Marcus said. He stepped closer and she could smell his cologne now, that expensive scent she used to love. His hand reached for her face and she flinched away so hard she knocked a glass off the counter. It shattered on the floor, but neither of them looked at it. "I think we need to call Dr. Weiss. Maybe increase your medication." Emma stared at him. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong with what he had just said. "I am not on medication." Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a second, a flash of something that looked almost like irritation before the mask slid back into place. "Emma," he said slowly, carefully, like he was explaining something to a small child. "You have been on medication for 3 months now, for the anxiety, for the depression. You just do not remember taking it. That is one of the side effects." The room tilted. The floor seemed to shift beneath her feet. The vitamins. Every morning, Marcus brought her prenatal vitamins and a glass of water. He stood there and watched her swallow them. He smiled and kissed her forehead and told her she was glowing. He had been doing it for months. What were the pills she had been taking? "No," Emma said. Her voice came out strangled. "You have been drugging me." Marcus's expression shifted. The concern melted away, replaced by something colder, harder, something she had never seen on his face before. "Drugging you," he repeated. "Listen to yourself, Emma. This is exactly what I am talking about. Paranoid delusions, conspiracy theories. This is what happened to your mother before she drove off that bridge." "My mother did not drive off a bridge. It was a car accident." "Another driver. Is that what they told you?" Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it now. The mask was slipping, and what lay beneath was something she did not recognize. "The records tell a different story, but we can discuss that later. Right now, you need to calm down. You need to think about the baby." "I need to leave," Emma said. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "I need to get out of here." "Go where?" Marcus spread his hands, a gesture of helpless reason. You are 7 months pregnant. It is dark outside. You have no money of your own, no family, no support system. Where exactly are you planning to go? She was already moving, grabbing her purse from the counter, her car keys, her phone with its precious photographs. Marcus did not try to stop her. That was the part that terrified her most. He simply pulled out his own phone, dialed a number, and spoke calmly into the receiver while she fumbled with the front door. She found the documents, he said. Activate the protocol. Emma ran. She drove through the dark Connecticut streets with no destination, no plan, just the desperate need to put distance between herself and the man she had married. Her hands shook on the steering wheel so badly she could barely stay in her lane. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. The headlights carved tunnels through the darkness. The rain started somewhere around mile 15, first a drizzle, then a downpour that turned the windshield into a waterfall. She pulled over twice to throw up on the side of the road. By the time she reached Diane's neighborhood in Hartford, 45 minutes later, she was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. The baby was moving constantly, agitated by the stress hormones flooding Emma's system. She parked crookedly in Diane's driveway, stumbled up the porch steps, and rang the doorbell. The porch light flickered on. The door opened. Diane took one look at her and pulled her inside without a word. The living room was warm and cluttered, the kind of lived-in mess that Emma had always found comforting. Children's toys scattered across the floor, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, the smell of something that might have been dinner or might have been last night's takeout. Normal. Real. Everything Marcus's mansion was not. They sat on the couch. Diane brought a blanket and wrapped it around Emma's shoulders, then sat down beside her and waited. Emma told her everything. The documents in the drawer, the forged signature, the custody agreement, the therapy records someone had obtained illegally and annotated for use against her, the hidden phone, the hotel receipts, the engagement ring for another woman, the medication disguised as vitamins. Diane listened with a face like stone, her hands clenched into fists on her knees, but she did not interrupt. She let Emma talk until the words ran out and there was nothing left but silence and the sound of rain against the windows. When Emma finished, Diane stood up and walked to the kitchen. She came back with 2 glasses of wine, looked at Emma's belly, cursed under her breath, and took 1 glass back. We are calling the police, Diane said. He has lawyers, Emma said weakly. He has connections. He knows judges and politicians and people who can make problems disappear. And you have evidence. Diane pointed at Emma's phone. You have photos of everything. That is proof. That is documentation. That is exactly what you need. Emma nodded slowly. The exhaustion was settling into her bones now, weighing her down like concrete. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind an emptiness that felt bottomless. But beneath the emptiness, something else was stirring. Not hope exactly, more like determination. A small flame that refused to be extinguished. Okay, she said. We call the police. Diane made the call. 2 officers arrived within the hour. They were polite, professional. They sat in Diane's living room and looked at the photos on Emma's phone and took notes in small black notebooks. They asked questions. How long had she been married? When did she first notice something wrong? Had her husband ever been violent? Did she have somewhere safe to stay? Emma answered everything. She told them about the documents, the forged signature, the medication. She showed them the photos, scrolling through each one while the officers leaned in to look. This is good, one of them said. This is exactly the kind of evidence we need. We will send officers to your residence to speak with your husband. Emma felt something loosen in her chest, relief, the beginning of hope. Then the doorbell rang. Diane went to answer it. Emma heard voices in the hallway, low, tense. The living room door opened. Marcus Weston stood on Diane's porch. Beside him was a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Behind them was a woman in a white coat, holding a clipboard and wearing an expression of professional concern. Officers, Marcus said smoothly, thank you for coming so quickly. I am afraid my wife has had a psychiatric episode. Emma's blood turned to ice. The woman in the white coat stepped forward. I am Dr. Patricia Novak. Mr. Weston contacted me regarding his wife's medical history. I have documentation of her previous psychotic breaks dating back to adolescence. She handed a folder to the nearest officer. He opened it. His expression changed. She has been under tremendous stress, Marcus continued, his voice dripping with concern and sadness. The pregnancy has been difficult. She has been experiencing paranoid delusions for months. I tried to get her help, but she refused treatment. That is not true, Emma said. Her voice came out thin, desperate. None of that is true. The officer looked at the folder, then at Emma, then at Marcus, standing there in his expensive coat with his expensive lawyer and his expensive psychiatrist. Ma'am, the officer said gently, do you want to show us those photos again? Emma fumbled with her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She opened the gallery, strolled to where the photos should have been. The folder was empty. They were gone. Every single one. Remotely wiped. She looked up at Marcus. He smiled at her. The same smile from the day he proposed. The officers exchanged glances. Ma'am, one of them said, his voice careful now. The voice you use with someone who might be unstable. Is there someone who can stay with you tonight? A family member? I will take her home, Marcus said. He stepped forward, reaching for Emma's arm. She needs rest. She needs her medication. No. Diane stepped between them, her body a wall of protective fury. She is staying here. You need to leave now. The tension stretched until it almost snapped. The officers shifted uncomfortably. Novak clutched her clipboard. The lawyer whispered something to Marcus. Then Marcus shrugged. A small gesture, almost casual. Of course, he said. Whatever makes her comfortable. He looked at Emma one last time. I will be waiting when you are ready to come home. Sweetheart, we can work through this together. I love you. He left. The doctors left. The lawyer left. The police left with apologetic looks that made Emma want to scream. She sat on Diane's couch and stared at her empty phone. I had them, she whispered. I had proof. I had evidence. Diane sat beside her and took her hand. Her grip was fierce, almost painful. Tomorrow, Diane said firmly. Tomorrow we start over. We get a burner phone he does not know about. We back up everything to a cloud he cannot touch. We write down every single thing you remember while it is still fresh, and we find you a lawyer, a real lawyer, not his lawyer, not anyone connected to his family or his company or his money. Emma nodded. The fight was not over. It was just beginning, but she had no idea how much more she would have to lose before it ended. Emma woke on Diane's couch to the smell of coffee and the sound of rain still beating against the windows. For 3 blessed seconds, she forgot where she was. For 3 seconds, she was just a pregnant woman waking from sleep, warm and comfortable and safe. Then everything came flooding back. The documents, the forged signatures, the empty phone gallery. Marcus's smile as the police walked away. She sat up slowly, one hand pressed against her lower back where a dull ache had settled during the night. Her baby shifted inside her, a flutter of movement that usually made her smile. Today it just reminded her of everything at stake. Diane appeared in the doorway, already dressed, holding a mug. I made decaf. And toast. You need to eat something. Emma accepted the mug but could not bring herself to drink. I do not know if I can. You can. You have to. Diane sat down beside her. We have a lot to do today. They spent the morning building their case from scratch. Diane drove to the Walmart 2 towns over and bought a prepaid phone with cash. They created a new email account using a fake name and a VPN that Diane's nephew had taught her to use. They uploaded everything Emma could remember, typing out every detail she had seen in those documents while it was still fresh in her mind. It was not proof. Not like the photographs would have been, but it was something. Charlotte Banks. Diane said around noon, scrolling through her laptop. She is the best divorce attorney in the state, maybe the entire East Coast. She took on the Henderson case 3 years ago. You remember that one? Emma shook her head. State senator's wife, Diane explained. Husband tried to bury her in litigation for 6 years. Had lawyers coming at her from every angle. Charlotte got her full custody and 70% of assets. The senator had to resign. She sounds expensive. She does consultations for free. And according to her website, she specializes in cases involving wealthy, powerful men who think they are above the law. Diane looked up with a grim smile. Sounds like she was born to take on Marcus Weston. By 2 o'clock, they had an appointment scheduled for the next morning. Emma allowed herself to feel something close to hope. Maybe this would work. Maybe the system would protect her. That was her first mistake, believing the system was designed to help women like her. Now Emma knows what she did not know then. The courts move slowly, money moves fast, and men like Marcus Weston have been manipulating systems since before she was born. Here is the truth nobody tells you when you marry into wealth. The money is not yours. The power is not yours. The connections are not yours. You are a guest in their world, and they can revoke your invitation at any moment. The afternoon passed quietly. Emma rested on the couch while Diane worked from her laptop at the kitchen table, trying to catch up on the job she had neglected to take care of her friend. The rain continued falling. The baby continued moving. Around 4 o'clock, Emma felt the first cramp. She ignored it at first. Braxton Hicks, probably. Practice contractions. The doctor had told her to expect them at this stage. Uncomfortable but harmless. The second cramp came 10 minutes later. Sharper. Like a fist clenching inside her. Still, she ignored it. Stress, she told herself. Her body reacting to everything she had been through. By the third one, she was doubled over on the couch, clutching her stomach with both hands. Diane was beside her in seconds. What is wrong? What is happening? Something is not right, Emma gasped. Something is really not right. The drive to the hospital took 12 minutes. Emma counted every one of them, watching the numbers change on the car's dashboard clock while pain rolled through her in waves. Each wave worse than the last, each one stealing more of her breath. She gripped the door handle and tried to focus on anything else. The rain on the windshield, the red blur of taillights ahead, the sound of Diane's voice telling her to breathe. Just breathe. We are almost there. The emergency room was bright and loud and smelled like antiseptic and fear. Nurses in blue scrubs rushed toward her with a wheelchair. Someone was asking questions. Date of last period, previous pregnancies, known complications. Emma answered on autopilot. Her mind was somewhere else, floating above her body like a balloon on a string. They took her to a room with machines and monitors. Someone pressed a cold probe to her belly. A sound filled the room, fast and rhythmic, her baby's heartbeat. For one moment, Emma let herself believe everything would be okay. Then the sound changed, slowed, stuttered, stopped. We are losing the heartbeat, someone said. Get the doctor now. After that, everything blurred together. Hands pressing on her stomach, needles sliding into her arm, voices speaking in a language she no longer understood. She remembered the ceiling, white tiles arranged in a grid. She counted them while they worked on her. Something to focus on, something to hold on to. 47 tiles. She remembered thinking that was an odd number. 47. She had expected it to be even. Ceilings were usually symmetrical. Someone had miscounted when they installed them. She remembered a nurse holding her hand, squeezing too tight, then not tight enough. She remembered waking up in a different room, quieter, dimmer, the machine still beeping but slower now. Steadier. A doctor stood beside her bed. His face was kind and tired and very, very sorry. The kind of face that had delivered bad news too many times and never gotten used to it. Mrs. Weston, he said, I am so sorry. The placental abruption happened too fast. There was nothing we could do. Emma stared at him. The words made no sense. They were just sounds arranged in a particular order. They had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with the baby she had been talking to for 7 months, nothing to do with the nursery full of yellow butterflies waiting in that lonely mansion. Your husband is on his way, the doctor continued gently. We called him. He should be here soon. No, Emma whispered. The word came out broken. Do not let him in. But she was too weak to fight, too empty, too broken. She turned her head toward the window and watched the rain continue to fall, endless and indifferent, while the doctor explained things about blood loss and emergency surgery and grief counseling. She did not hear any of it. She was thinking about 47 tiles. When Marcus arrived, he brought flowers. White lilies. Funeral flowers. The same ones he kept in vases by the staircase at home. Behind him, a camera crew from a local news station was setting up in the hallway. How they had known to come, Emma would never figure out. Someone had tipped them off. Someone had arranged for her worst moment to be broadcast across Connecticut. My wife is very fragile, Marcus told the cameras. his voice thick with practiced grief. "We lost our baby because of the stress from her mental health episodes. I tried to get her help, but she refused. I just want to bring her home where she belongs." Emma watched him perform his devastation for the audience. She watched the nurses look at her with pity. She watched the doctor nod sympathetically at her devoted husband. And she understood with perfect, terrible clarity that she was completely alone. The only witness to her truth was gone. The baby she had loved, the baby she had talked to every night, the baby she had promised to protect from a world that could be cruel. Gone. Because of stress, they said, because of her fragile mental state. But Emma knew. Deep in her bones, in the hollow space where her child used to be, she knew. This was not an accident. This was not natural. This was murder. And the man who ordered it was holding her hand and crying for the cameras. Emma spent 3 days in the hospital. She slept. She stared at walls. She refused to eat until the nurses threatened to put in a feeding tube. Diane came every day. She sat beside the bed and held Emma's hand and did not try to fill the silence with words. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes just having someone there, someone who believed her, was the only thing keeping Emma from slipping under completely. On the third night, around 2 in the morning, Emma woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful, not the soft-soled shuffle of nurses making rounds. The door opened. 2 police officers stepped inside, different from the ones who had come to Diane's apartment. These 2 had harder faces, colder eyes. Emma Callahan Weston? The first officer had a face like granite. His hand rested on his belt, near his handcuffs. "You are under arrest for embezzlement and fraud." Emma blinked. The words did not make sense. She was still half asleep, still raw from grief, still wearing a hospital gown and attached to an IV drip. "What are you talking about?" The second officer moved toward the bed with handcuffs already in his hand. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "I did not do anything," Emma said. Her voice came out small, fragile, pathetic to her own ears. "I just lost my baby. I have been in this hospital for 3 days. I could not have done anything." "Ma'am, we have a warrant." The officer was already reaching for her wrist. "We need you to come with us." Diane burst through the door behind them. She must have been sleeping in the waiting room again, curled up on those uncomfortable chairs because she refused to leave Emma alone in this place. "What the hell is going on here?" Diane demanded. "This woman just had a miscarriage. She has been in this bed for 3 days. She is still recovering from surgery." The officer did not even look at her. He handed a folded document to the nurse who had followed him in. "Your friend is being charged with wire fraud and embezzlement. She allegedly transferred $2.3 million from joint marital accounts into offshore accounts under her control." Emma's head was spinning. She did not have access to any accounts. She did not even know the passwords. Marcus had never shared that information with her. "I never touched any money," Emma said. "I do not know anything about offshore accounts. I do not even have online banking set up." "Ma'am, we have documentation." The officer's voice was flat, bored, like he had heard 100 women claim innocence before. "Wire transfers with your digital signature, account records in your name, international transactions dating back 18 months. It is forged," Emma said desperately. "It has to be forged. My husband has been setting me up. He has lawyers and accountants and people who can fake anything." The officers exchanged a look. Emma knew that look. She had seen it on the faces of the other officers, the ones who came to Diane's apartment. The look that said, "Crazy woman making excuses." They put her in handcuffs, in the hospital bed, in the gown she had been wearing since the miscarriage. Diane was shouting, demanding to see badges, threatening to call her own lawyer, threatening to call the media, threatening to call God himself if that was what it took. But the officers just kept walking, down the hallway, past the nurse's station, through the emergency exit where a patrol car waited with its lights flashing. The ride to the station took 20 minutes. Emma watched the city pass through the rain-streaked window. She was still bleeding from the miscarriage. The gown was thin and cold against her skin. Her wrists ached where the metal bit into them. At the station, they took her photograph. The mugshot camera flashed twice. She did not even have the strength to close her eyes. Later, she would see that photograph everywhere, on news websites, on social media. In the tabloids that printed stories about the crazy wife who stole millions from her billionaire husband, her face would become a symbol of wealthy women gone wrong, of gold diggers getting what they deserved. No one would mention that she was still bleeding. No one would mention the baby she had lost 3 days before. No one would mention that she had not eaten in 72 hours and could barely stand. They put her in a holding cell with 5 other women. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. The bench was hard and cold and smelled like disinfectant and despair. A woman across the cell looked at her, maybe 50 years old, tired eyes, knowing smile, the kind of woman who had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. "You are that rich lady from TV," the woman said, "the crazy one who stole from her husband." Emma pressed her back against the wall. "I did not steal anything." The woman shrugged. "Honey, none of us did. That is what we all say." Emma closed her eyes. The cold seeped through the thin gown, her arms wrapped around her empty stomach out of habit. There was nothing there anymore. "What was his name?" the woman asked. Emma opened her eyes. "What? The baby. Did you name him? Or her?" Emma had not expected the question. She had not expected any kindness in this place. "I did not know if it was a boy or girl," Emma whispered. "We were going to be surprised." The woman nodded slowly, her face softened. "I lost one too, years ago, before I ended up in places like this. Still think about her sometimes. Named her Grace, even though I never got to meet her." Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She had not cried since it happened. Not once. She'd been too shocked, too numb, too focused on survival. But now, in this cold cell with a stranger who understood, she could not stop. The woman moved to sit beside her. She smelled like cigarettes and cheap perfume, but her shoulder was warm when Emma leaned against it. "First time inside?" the woman asked. Emma nodded. She could not speak. "The name is Rhonda. Here is what you need to know about survival. Do not drink the coffee. It will give you diarrhea for a week. Do not accept the top bunk. The springs will stab you all night. And whatever you do, do not cry where anyone important can see. Crying in here is like blood in shark water." Emma wiped her face with the back of her hand. "What do I do instead?" "Get angry." Rhonda's voice hardened. Something in her eyes went dark. "Anger is free, and it is a whole lot more useful than tears." Emma looked at her. "I do not know how to be angry." Rhonda smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned things the hard way. "You got a husband who did this to you? Here is what my mama told me when I was about your age. She said a man who needs to destroy you to feel big has got something small he is hiding. Find what he is hiding. That is your ticket out." Emma let the words sink in. Something small he is hiding. Marcus had built his empire on secrets, on lies, on destroying anyone who got too close to the truth. If she could find what he was hiding, she could destroy him right back. But first she had to survive this cell, this night, this endless, terrible moment where everything she had ever hoped for was ash. She leaned her head against Rhonda's shoulder and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would start fighting. Tonight she would let herself grieve. The arraignment happened 3 days later in a courthouse that smelled like old wood and older justice. Emma stood before the judge wearing borrowed clothes that Diane had brought from a thrift store. The suit did not fit right. The shoes pinched her feet, but at least she was not in a hospital gown anymore. Her public defender was a young man who looked like he had graduated law school about 15 minutes ago. He glanced at her file for maybe 5 minutes before the hearing began. He did not ask her any questions. He did not seem to care about her answers. The prosecutor, by contrast, was sharp and polished and clearly well prepared. He spoke about the evidence against Emma with the confidence of someone who had already won. The judge set bail at $500,000. Emma felt her stomach drop through the floor. She did not have $500, let alone $500,000. Then the courtroom doors opened. A woman walked in like she owned the place, maybe 50 years old. Silver hair cut sharp at her jaw. A charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma used to make in a month. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with the precision of a metronome. "Your Honor," the woman said, "Charlotte Banks representing Mrs. Weston. I am taking over this case." The public defender looked relieved to be dismissed. He gathered his papers and practically ran from the courtroom. Charlotte stood beside Emma and spoke with quiet authority about false charges, planted evidence, insufficient grounds for arrest. She mentioned federal investigations into Weston Holdings. She referenced previous cases with similar patterns of financial manipulation by wealthy husbands against their wives. She was magnificent. By the end of the hearing, bail was reduced to $50,000. An anonymous donor posted it within the hour. Emma walked out of the courthouse into gray afternoon light. Her legs felt weak. Her head was spinning. Charlotte guided her to a black car waiting at the curb. "Who are you?" Emma asked once they were inside. The leather seats were soft. The air conditioning hummed. It felt like another world. "Why are you helping me?" Charlotte pulled a folder from her briefcase. It was thick, well-worn. 10 years ago, I represented a woman named Sarah Mitchell. Her husband was a real estate developer with political connections. Sound familiar? Emma nodded slowly. "He destroyed her," Charlotte continued. Her voice was flat, professional, but her eyes burned with something older than anger. Something that looked like a wound that had never healed. Fabricated evidence. Manufactured witnesses. Doctors who testified that she was mentally unstable. He took everything from her. Her money, her home, her children. What happened to her? She took her own life 3 years later. Charlotte closed the folder. "I swore I would never let another man like that win. When I heard about your case, when I saw the patterns, the playbook, I knew Marcus Weston was doing exactly what Michael Mitchell did. The same strategy, the same tactics, probably the same lawyers advising him." Emma stared at the folder. It felt heavier than it looked. "How do we stop him? We build a case he cannot bury." Charlotte handed her a burner phone. "This number is untraceable. Use it for anything related to the case. Do not trust anyone he might have contact with. Do not use any technology connected to him. Do not go anywhere alone if you can help it." The car dropped Emma at Diane's apartment. For the first time in weeks, something like hope began to stir in her chest. She had a lawyer now, a real one, someone who understood what Marcus was capable of. She had a plan, evidence to gather, steps to follow. Maybe this could actually work. That hope lasted exactly 4 hours. Emma was sitting on Diane's couch, reviewing documents Charlotte had given her, when her new burner phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Come home now, or your friend pays for your mistakes." Emma's blood went cold. She called Diane's cell. No answer, straight to voicemail. She ran to the window. Diane's car was still in the parking lot. The front door was open, just slightly. Emma had not noticed before. She had been too focused on the documents. She pushed through it. Diane's apartment was dark. Too dark for early evening. The blinds were drawn, the lights were off. "Diane," a sound from the bedroom. Muffled. Wrong. Emma found her on the floor beside the bed. Blood on her face. One eye swollen completely shut. Breathing but barely conscious. Her arms were folded at wrong angles, like she had tried to protect herself from blows that came too fast. The paramedics came in 7 minutes. Police came in 12. Emma rode in the ambulance, holding Diane's hand and answering questions she could not process. Someone broke in. That was the official story. Random home invasion. Nothing stolen. But Emma saw the bruises on Diane's wrists. Deliberate. Precise. The work of someone who wanted to hurt, not kill. The work of someone sending a message. And she saw the words scrawled on the bathroom mirror in Diane's own lipstick. "Stop, or she dies next time." At the hospital, Diane woke long enough to grab Emma's arm. Her voice was raw and barely audible. "He sent someone," Diane whispered. "2 men. They said if you do not stop fighting, the next visit will not be a warning." Emma felt something break inside her. Not hope this time. Something harder. Something that had been holding her together. She had lost her baby. She had lost her freedom. And now she had almost lost her best friend. If she kept fighting, Diane would die. If she stopped fighting, she would lose everything anyway. There was no right choice. There was no safe path. For the first time, Emma understood exactly what kind of man she had married. The motel room cost $42 a night. Emma paid car insurance. She gave a fake name at the front desk. The walls were thin. She could hear the couple next door arguing through the plaster. Something about money. Something about lux. The universal sounds of a relationship falling apart. The bedspread had stains she tried not to examine too closely. The carpet was worn through in patches. The bathroom had a persistent drip that marked time like a broken clock. But it was safe. For now. She sat on the edge of the bed and counted what she had left. $847 in cash. Everything Diane had been able to withdraw before the attack. The old laptop Diane insisted she take. The burner phone Charlotte gave her. No family, no home, no baby. No one to call except a lawyer she barely knew, and a friend who was lying in a hospital bed because of her. She was 32 years old and completely alone in the world. The thought hit her hard enough to steal her breath. She had been alone before, after her parents died, in the foster homes that shuttled her from family to family like an unwanted package, through college and her first apartment and all those years of building a life from nothing. But this was different. This was an aloneness that went deeper than circumstance. This was the kind of alone that made you wonder if there was any point in getting up tomorrow. Emma opened her purse and looked at the bottle of sleeping pills inside. She had asked for them at the hospital, for the grief, for the nightmares, for the endless loop of 47 ceiling tiles that played behind her eyes every time she closed them. She could take them all, right now, in the pain and the fear and the endless exhaustion. Marcus would win, but he was going to win anyway, was he not? He had lawyers and money and a system built to protect men like him. What could one broken woman do against all of that? The world would not miss her. She had no one left who would mourn her. No one except Diane, and Diane would probably be safer if Emma was gone. Her fingers touched the bottle. Then they touched something else. A folded piece of paper stuck to the bottom of her purse. Emma pulled it out. The paper was old and soft from years of handling. She had forgotten it was there. It had been there since high school, tucked into every wallet and purse she had ever owned. A note from Mrs. Patterson, her foster mother from 10th grade, the only good home she had ever known. Mrs. Patterson had been different from the others. She did not take in foster children for the government check. She did not use them for free labor around the house. She actually seemed to care. When Emma aged out of the system at 18, Mrs. Patterson had pressed this note into her hand. "Keep it," she said, "for the hard days. And there will be hard days, Emma, but they will not last forever." Emma unfolded the paper and read the familiar words. "The world will try to break you because you are soft. Do not let them make you hard. Let them make you sharp. There is a difference, love, Mrs. Patterson. Sharp. Not hard, not cruel, not broken. Sharp." Emma looked at the pills. Then she walked to the bathroom and flushed them down the toilet, watching them swirl and disappear. She could be sharp. She could take all this pain and all this rage and turn it into something useful. She picked up the burner phone and called Charlotte Banks. "I am done hiding," Emma said. Her voice surprised her. It was steady, clear, almost cold. "Tell me what you need. I will do whatever it takes." Charlotte's voice was calm and steady on the other end. "First, I need you to understand something. Men like Marcus do not lose because they get caught. They get caught all the time. They lose because they get arrogant. They think they have already won, so they stop being careful. They make mistakes. What does that mean for me? It means we make him think he has won." Charlotte paused. "We make you look defeated, broken, surrendered. And while he is celebrating, and we build a case so airtight he cannot bribe or threaten his way out of it." Emma closed her eyes. "You want me to pretend to give up. I want you to become bait." Charlotte's voice hardened. "It is dangerous. If he suspects you are playing him, he will escalate again. He will hurt more people. Maybe you." "He already hurt everyone," Emma said. "He already took everything. The only thing he has not taken is my life. And I would rather die fighting than live as his victim." "Then here is what we do." Charlotte's voice shifted, harder now, ready for war. "You reach out to Marcus. You tell him you have realized you were wrong. You want to come home and sign whatever papers he needs to make this all go away. He will never believe that. He will believe it because his ego demands it. Men like him need to be proven right. They need to see their enemies surrender. You give him that performance, and he will lower his guard." Emma thought about Marcus's smile, that perfect, practiced smile he wore like a mask. She had spent 2 years studying that smile. She knew exactly what it looked like when it was real. She also knew what it looked like when it was fake. The problem was, She had never seen the real version. Okay, she said. What else? Charlotte explained the rest of the plan over the next hour. Detective Ray Santos from the FBI had been building a federal case against Weston Holdings for years. Financial crimes, insurance fraud, money laundering. But he could never get close enough to the inner circle. He needed an insider witness to tie it all together. If Emma could get Marcus talking on record, Santos could arrest him. The federal charges would stick where the state charges might not. Different jurisdiction, different judges, different rules. There was one more piece. There is a man named Nathan Cole, Charlotte said. His company, Cole Industries, has been investigating Weston Holdings for years, looking for evidence of fraud, looking for cracks in the empire. Emma frowned. The name sparked something in her memory. She had seen it in Marcus's files. A competitor he ranted about constantly. Why would he help me? Because Nathan Cole's sister was one of Marcus's victims. Charlotte's voice softened. She died 5 years ago under suspicious circumstances. Nathan has been waiting for someone brave enough to take Marcus down. Emma agreed to meet him. The coffee shop was in a part of the city where neither of them would be recognized. Emma arrived first. She ordered a black coffee and sat in a corner booth where she could watch the door. Nathan Cole walked in at exactly noon. Tall, dark hair going silver at the temples, eyes that looked like they had not smiled in a very long time. He sat across from her without ordering anything. Charlotte told me about you, Nathan said. His voice was low and careful. She says you want to take down Marcus Weston? I want to destroy him, Emma corrected. Nathan studied her face for a long moment. What did he take from you? My baby. My freedom. My best friend almost died because of me. Emma paused. What did he take from you? Nathan's jaw tightened. My sister, Rebecca. She was married to Marcus for 2 years before she died. They called it suicide. But I know what he did to her. The same things he did to you. The gaslighting, the isolation, the medication that was not medication. Emma felt cold recognition in her chest. There were others. There were always others. Nathan leaned forward. That is how predators survive. They count on us being too ashamed to talk, too isolated to connect the dots, too broken to fight back. I am done being broken, Emma said. Then let me tell you what I know. Nathan pulled a flash drive from his pocket. It looked ordinary, small, the kind of thing you could buy at any office supply store. 5 years of investigation, Nathan said. Financial records, insurance claims, shell companies. Everything I could find that proves Weston Holdings is a criminal enterprise built on fraud and suffering. Why have you not used it? Because I could never get the last piece. Nathan's eyes met hers. I need someone inside, someone Marcus trusts enough to lower his guard around. He does not trust me anymore. Nathan shook his head. He does not trust the version of you that ran, but the version that comes crawling back, broken and defeated, that version he will trust completely. Because that is what he needs to believe, that he won. Emma turned the flash drive over in her hands. What happens if this works? Marcus goes to prison, his company collapses, his victims get justice. Nathan paused. And maybe somewhere my sister finally gets to rest. The coffee shop felt very quiet. The world felt very still. I am in, Emma said. Tell me what you need me to do. The day before Emma was scheduled to meet Marcus, she received an anonymous text on her burner phone. Greenhouse Cafe, 3 p.m. Come alone. I know what he did to your baby. Emma's first instinct was to ignore it. A trap. Another manipulation. But something made her go. Victoria Blake was waiting when she arrived. Marcus's executive assistant. The woman whose face Emma had seen in paparazzi photos for months. The mistress. She looked nothing like Emma expected. Not smug, not triumphant, just tired and scared. You should not be here, Emma said. I know. Victoria's hands trembled around her coffee cup. But I did not know who else to talk to. Why would you talk to me at all? Because I am pregnant. Victoria's voice cracked. And I found the same documents you found. The same contingency protocol, with my name on them this time. Emma stared at her. The woman she had hated for months. The woman she blamed for destroying her marriage. Now she saw something different. Another victim. Another woman caught in the web. He has done this before, Victoria said. She pulled a folder from her purse. Over and over, he targets vulnerable women, women without families, women no one will miss. The folder contained photographs, medical records, uninsurance claims. 8 women connected to Marcus Weston over the past 15 years. What happens to them, Emma asked. They lose their babies, Victoria whispered. All of them, miscarriages caused by medication he gives them without their knowledge. Then the company files insurance claims on fertility treatments that never happen. Each claim is worth $500,000. Emma felt sick. This was not just manipulation. This was a business model. Your baby did not die from stress, Victoria said. He gave you something, the same thing he is planning to give me. But there was more. Victoria handed her another document. This one was older, a death certificate from 30 years ago. Marcus's mother did not die in childbirth, Victoria said. She was murdered for the insurance money. Marcus was 5 years old. He watched it happen. Emma closed the folder. The truth was worse than anything she had imagined. Why are you telling me this? Because I need your help to get out. Victoria's eyes were desperate. And you need my help to stop him. Emma looked at the woman across from her. Then she nodded. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow we end this. The Weston estate looked the same as always. $15 million of manicured perfection hiding rod underneath. Emma drove through the gates at exactly 7 p.m. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were steady. She was wearing a wire. Nathan's people had fitted it that morning. Undetectable. High quality. Every word would be recorded. Marcus met her at the door with champagne and that perfect smile. Emma, he said, you look beautiful. She forced herself to smile back. Thank you for agreeing to see me. Of course. This is your home. It always has been. They sat in the living room, the same room where he had proposed, the same cushions where she had told him about the pregnancy. I have been thinking, Emma said. Her voice was soft, defeated. The doctors were right about me. I was not in my right mind. Marcus nodded sympathetically. I only ever wanted what was best for you. I know that now. I just want to sign whatever papers you need and move on. He smiled, triumphant, arrogant, and then he started talking. He told her everything, the other women, the insurance claims, the medication. He was proud of it. He wanted her to know how clever he had been. Your baby, he said, was worth $400,000 in insurance payouts, plus the leverage it gave me over the estate. It was a good investment. Emma felt rage building in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. What about the others? The others were practice. Marcus leaned back, swirling his wine. You perfect a system over time. My father taught me that. He created the template. I just improved it. Your father? He did the same thing to my mother. Marcus smiled. It was not a nice smile. She was the first. I watched him do it. I learned everything from him. Emma could not believe what she was hearing. He was confessing. On tape. To everything. Then Marcus leaned forward. But you already knew all that, did you not? Emma froze. The wire, Marcus said calmly. I know about it. I have known since you walked in. Did you really think you could trap me in my own house? The doors burst open. Security guards flooded in. Someone grabbed Emma's arms. Marcus stood, brushing off his jacket. Take her to the basement, he said. We have some things to discuss. This was not how it was supposed to go. Emma struggled as they dragged her through the hallway, past the library, past the office where she had found the documents that started everything, into darkness. The basement was cold and dark. They tied Emma to a chair. Marcus stood in front of her, backlit by a single light. You almost had me, he said. I have to admit, you came closer than anyone else. The FBI knows where I am, Emma said. Charlotte? Nathan? They will come. Marcus laughed. By the time they realize anything is wrong, you will have had another psychotic break. You will have attacked me. My security will have had to restrain you. Tragic, but believable. He was going to kill her, frame it as self-defense, just like he had done to the others. But Emma had one more card to play. Victoria, she said. Marcus's smile flickered. She has copies of everything. She is meeting with the FBI right now. Everything you just told me, she recorded it too. Different location, different device, backup plan. Marcus stared at her. Before he could respond, the basement door exploded inward. FBI, hands up, nobody move. Detective Santos led the raid. 20 agents in tactical gear flooded the basement. Marcus tried to run. They tackled him before he got 3 steps. It was over. Later, Emma learned the full story. Victoria had worn her own wire. While Marcus was confessing to Emma, Victoria was presenting evidence to Santos in a hotel room across town. The FBI had been monitoring both conversations. Marcus Weston was arrested on 17 federal charges. Fraud, money laundering, murder. The trial lasted 3 months. Emma testified. Victoria testified. 8 families finally learned what happened to their daughters. Marcus was sentenced to life without parole. Weston Holdings collapsed. The assets were seized and distributed to victims. Emma received enough to start over. But money was not what she wanted. She wanted to make sure no one else went through what she did. 1 year later, she founded the Weston Survivors Fund, a nonprofit helping women escape financial abuse. Nathan Cole helped her run it. They had become friends during the trial. Then something more. He was different from Marcus. Kind, patient. He understood trauma because he had his own. They married on a quiet beach in Maine, just them and a few close friends. Diane was the witness. Emma did not change her name. She was still Emma Callahan. She had earned that name, but she had a new life now, a real one, built on truth instead of lies. 2 years after the trial, a young woman walked into Emma's office, nervous, scared, clutching papers in her hands. "I found something," the woman said, "in my husband's desk. I think he is doing what Marcus Weston did." Emma looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Sit down," Emma said. "Tell me everything. We are going to help you." Outside, the sun was shining, birds were singing, the world kept turning. But in that small office, something important was happening. A woman who had lost everything was teaching another woman how to survive. That was the real victory. Not the trial, not the money, not even seeing Marcus behind bars. The real victory was this: taking the worst thing that ever happened to her and turning it into a weapon that saved others. Sharp, not hard, sharp. Mrs. Patterson would have been proud. 3 months after her verdict, Emma Callahan stood at a podium in a conference center in Washington, D.C. The room was full. Lawyers, advocates, survivors, journalists, all gathered for the National Summit on Domestic Financial Abuse. Emma was the keynote speaker. She looked out at the faces watching her and remembered the woman she used to be. The soft woman, the trusting woman, the woman who believed love could fix anything. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone sharper, someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side still standing. "When I married Marcus Weston," Emma began, her voice steady and clear, "I thought I was living a fairy tale. The orphan girl rescued by the handsome billionaire. The happy ending I never thought I deserved." She paused. Let the silence build. I was wrong. What I was living was a carefully constructed trap, a trap designed to isolate me, control me, and ultimately destroy me. She told her story. The discovery in the office drawer, the gaslighting that made her doubt her own mind, the miscarriage that was really murder, the frame job that put her in handcuffs, the jail cell where a stranger named Rhonda taught her the first lesson of survival. She told them about Diane, who almost died protecting her, about Charlotte, who never gave up, about Nathan, who had been waiting years for someone brave enough to fight back. And she told them about the 8 other women whose names she had found in Marcus's files. Women who never got to tell their own stories. Women whose deaths had been dismissed as accidents or suicides or unfortunate circumstances. Because of their evidence, Emma said. Marcus Weston is serving consecutive life sentences. His company is bankrupt. His name is synonymous with everything predatory and evil about wealth without accountability. She let that sink in. But here is what I want you to remember. I did not win because I was special. I did not win because I was smarter or stronger or braver than the women who came before me. I won because I refused to be destroyed, and because people helped me when I could not help myself. The room was perfectly still. Every woman in this room has survived something. Every woman here has been told she is too emotional, too paranoid, too much. I am here to tell you that you are not too much. You are exactly enough, and your voice matters. She gripped the podium. If you are in a situation where someone is controlling your money, your movements, your access to the world, please hear me. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. You are being abused. And there is a way out. Emma shared the resources, the hotlines, the legal aid organizations, the shelters that could help. She gave them everything she wished someone had given her. Then she stepped back from the podium. A woman in the front row raised her hand. Her eyes were wet. Her hands were trembling. "How did you keep going?" the woman asked. "When everything fell apart, how did you not give up?" Emma smiled. It was not a happy smile, but it was real. "Someone told me once that the world will try to break you because you are soft." She paused. She said, "Do not let them make you hard. Let them make you sharp. There is a difference." The woman nodded slowly. Being hard means closing yourself off, becoming cruel, letting bitterness win. Emma's voice softened, but being sharp means taking everything you have survived and turning it into a blade that cuts through lies, that protects others, that refuses to be dulled. She looked around the room at all those faces, all those stories, all that pain and resilience and hope. "You are all sharper than you know," Emma said, "and you deserve to believe that." The applause started slowly, then it built until it filled the room like thunder. Emma stepped down from the stage. People gathered around her. Handshakes, hugs, business cards, tears and thank yous and promises to keep fighting. In the chaos, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned. Nathan stood behind her. He had aged in the years since they first met, more gray at his temples, more lines around his eyes. But the warmth in his expression was the same. "That was incredible," he said. "I almost threw up backstage," Emma admitted. Nathan laughed softly. "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is speaking anyway." They had been married for 6 months now, a small ceremony on a beach in Maine, just family and close friends. Diane had cried through the whole thing. Emma had thought she would never trust anyone again. She had thought love was a trap designed to destroy her. But Nathan understood. He had his own scars, his own ghosts. Together, they had learned that healing did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing to build something new from the wreckage. "Ready to go home?" Nathan asked. Emma nodded. Her feet were tired. Her voice was hoarse. But her heart was full. Home was a modest apartment in Boston now. Nothing fancy. Nothing like the Weston mansion with its cold marble and empty rooms. This home was warm, lived in, real. They had a dog named Justice, a rescue who had been abandoned and abused before they found her. She was skittish at first. Now she slept on their bed and stole food from the counter. Emma had a theory that broken things recognized each other, found each other, healed each other. In the car, Nathan reached over and took her hand. "I am proud of you," he said. "I am proud of me too," Emma replied. She meant it. She looked out the window at the city passing by, the buildings and the people and the ordinary chaos of a world that kept spinning no matter what happened to any individual person. Somewhere out there, a woman was discovering her husband's secrets. A woman was having her first doubt. A woman was planning her escape. Emma could not save all of them. She knew that. But she could save some of them, and the ones she saved could save others. And on, rippling outward like stones dropped in water. That was enough. That had to be enough. Her phone buzzed with a message from the office. A new client inquiry. A woman who found her number on the foundation website. Emma read the message twice. "My name is Amanda. I think my husband is doing what yours did. I have documents, but I do not know who to trust. Can you help me?" Emma typed back immediately. "Come to my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring everything you have. I believe you." She sent the message and put the phone away. Nathan glanced at her. "New case?" "New beginning," Emma said, "for someone who needs one." The car pulled up to their building. Justice was probably waiting at the door, tail wagging, ready to greet them like they had been gone for years instead of hours. Emma climbed out of the car and looked up at the sky. It was getting dark. Stars were starting to appear. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who believed in fairy tales, the one who thought love would protect her from everything. That woman was gone, but Emma did not mourn her anymore. She understood now that some deaths were necessary, that sometimes you had to lose everything to find out what you were really made of. She was made of sharper stuff than she ever knew, and tomorrow she would teach someone else to be sharp too. Nathan took her hand as they walked into the building. The elevator rose. The door opened. Justice came bounding out to greet them, all wagging tail and joyful barking. Emma laughed and knelt down to pet her. This was her life now, messy and imperfect, and nothing like she had planned. It was everything. The courtroom was packed, media in the back rows, families of victims in the front, lawyers at their tables, shuffling papers, checking watches. Emma Callahan Cole sat in the witness stand for the third time this year. This case was different from Marcus's. Different perpetrator, different victims, same pattern. A hedge fund manager named Richard Thornton had been running the same playbook, targeting vulnerable women, using the same methods of control and manipulation. He had made one mistake. He targeted a woman who had read Emma's book. The book had been published 2 years ago. Surviving the Trap, a guide for women in financially abusive relationships. It spent 8 weeks on the bestseller list. It had been translated into 14 languages. More importantly, it had reached the people who needed it. The woman who reported Thornton had recognized the signs because she read Chapter 4, the chapter about isolation, about how predators separate you from your support systems before you even realize what is happening. She had called Emma's foundation that same day. Now Emma was testifying, explaining the patterns, connecting the dots, helping the jury understand what they were seeing. When she finished, the prosecutor asked one final question. Mrs. Cole, based on your experience and expertise, do you believe the defendant's behavior fits the pattern of predatory financial abuse? Emma looked at Thornton. He was staring at her with hatred in his eyes. She did not look away. Yes, she said clearly. It fits exactly. The verdict came back 2 days later. Guilty on all counts. Emma was not in the courtroom for the announcement. She was in her office working on a new case. Nathan texted her the news. She smiled, then went back to work. There was always more work. The foundation had grown beyond anything she imagined. 3 offices now, a staff of 20, partnerships with law enforcement agencies across the country. And the ripple effects kept spreading. Diane had gone back to school. She was a social worker now, specializing in domestic abuse cases. She said Emma inspired her. Charlotte had started a new law firm focused exclusively on representing abuse survivors. Pro bono work funded by settlements from cases like Marcus's. Victoria had rebuilt her life in California. She ran a support group for women who had been in relationships with narcissistic abusers. She and Emma talked once a month. The 8 women Marcus killed were not forgotten. Their families had created scholarships in their names, memorial funds, advocacy programs. Something good had come from something terrible. That was not justice. Not really. Justice would have been those women living their lives, having their babies, growing old with people who loved them, but it was something. It was proof that their deaths meant something, that their suffering created change. Emma thought about them every day. She kept their photos on her office wall, a reminder of why she did this work, a reminder of what was at stake. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Mrs. Cole, the voice was young, scared. I found your number online. I think I am in trouble. I think my boyfriend is not who he says he is. I found these documents and I do not know what to do. Emma pulled a notepad toward her. Take a breath, she said gently. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. On the other end of the line, a woman started talking. Emma listened. She wrote notes. She asked questions. And when the call ended, she picked up the phone and started making arrangements. Another woman who needed help. Another chance to turn pain into purpose. Another day in the life Emma Callahan Cole had built from the ashes of everything she lost. She worked until the sun went down. Then she packed up her bag and headed home. Nathan was making dinner when she walked in. Something that smelled amazing. He had become a surprisingly good cook over the years. Justice came running to greet her. Older now, but still excited to see her every single time. Emma knelt down to pet her. Good girl. I missed you too. She stood up and walked into the kitchen, wrapped her arms around Nathan from behind. Good day? He asked. Hard day, Emma said, but good. There is a new client, young woman, bad situation. I think we can help her. Nathan turned around and kissed her forehead. Of course you will, he said. You always do. They ate dinner together. They talked about ordinary things, work and weather and plans for the weekend. Later, after the dishes were done and Justice was asleep on her bed, Emma sat by the window and looked out at the city lights. She thought about the woman she had been, soft, trusting, so desperate for love that she ignored every warning sign. She thought about the woman she had become, sharp, careful, still capable of love, but no longer blind to danger. The journey between those two women had cost her everything: her baby, her safety, her belief in fairy tales. But it had given her something too: purpose, strength, a life that meant something. She would never get back what she lost. The grief would never fully heal. Some mornings she still woke up reaching for a baby that was not there. But she had found a way to live with it, to build something meaningful from the wreckage. That was all anyone could do, really. Take the broken pieces and make something new, something sharp, something beautiful, something that could save others from the same fate. Emma turned away from the window and went to join her husband. Tomorrow there would be more work, more pain, more women who needed help. But tonight she would rest. She had earned it. Now, if this story touched something in your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone you know who needs to hear this, I have a small request. Hit that like button. Not for me, for the algorithm. Because every like pushes this story to another woman who might be sitting in her own trap right now, wondering if she is crazy, wondering if anyone understands. Your like might be the reason she finds this video tonight. Drop a comment below. Tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Tell me if you have ever known someone like Marcus or someone like Emma. Your story matters too. Share this with a friend, a sister, a daughter, anyone who needs to know that survival is possible, that fighting back is possible, that there is life after the worst thing that ever happened to you. And if you have not subscribed yet, join this family. We tell stories here that matter. Stories about women who refuse to be broken. Stories that remind you who you really are. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey like this one. Now let us begin. Chapter 1. The Perfect Lie. And that is how Emma Callahan turned her greatest tragedy into her greatest triumph. Remember what she learned. The world will try to break you because you are soft. Do not let them make you hard. Let them make you sharp. If this story moved you, do not leave without showing some love. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Because somewhere out there another Emma is watching. And your engagement might be the reason she finds the courage to fight back. Thank you for staying until the end. You are part of this community now, and this community protects its own. Until next time, stay sharp.